Hi, everybody.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, comment ça va?
Ça va bien?
Bien.
Hola.
Jenny, it must be 40 degrees warmer on the west side than it is on the countries. I always see you kind of stripped down, but
It's funny because from my window, I can see the fog off the coast, but it's off the coast. So it's like there's fog there, there's cold up where you are, and right where I am, I'm in that sweet spot right now. Right now it's still sunny.
dress in layers just when I go to Santa Cruz because it's like going to a different climate. Michael remembers those days, don't you, Michael?
Sure do. Now I'm in Seattle where it's freezing all the time, although it was 92 here like 2 days ago.
No way.
Yeah, whatever.
Hey, do you surf there? Is there anywhere?
Oh God, no. It's way too cold. I'm holding out for New Zealand, man.
Holding out? I don't know, Michael. Your house in New Zealand might be empty for a while.
And I talked to a friend, with some of the airlines, and Hawaiian is supposedly going to start flying back to Auckland in October.
Really?
And they're going to be allowed to take passengers. So I was like, oh, okay. I'm in.
I remember many nice times spent at your house in New Zealand.
Yeah, it is nice.
That cute little house.
I don't know. Like you say, there's no such thing as a good samsara. It's still samsara. But it's pretty as close to a Pure Land as you can get around here.
I might want to argue with you about
it's a happy place, man.
When are we going, Michael? October?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
We're flying into Auckland, is that right? How big is this little house?
Right.
Well, there's plenty of room for tents. It's a big parcel, but no, it's like studio apartment kind of thing, but it's right at 90 Mile Beach, so you have like 60 miles of beach right in front of you and really good surf right out in the front.
Unbelievable. And this beach has like 3 people on it, and it's literally, I think it's 90 kilometers. They call it 90 miles.
No, it's like 60 Ks or 60 miles uninterrupted. You can drive for 60 miles on the beach.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And Michael has this house perched on a hill over the beach, where like one whole side is these sliding glass doors that you just sort of accordion back. And then there's a deck. And I'm telling you, it's about as good as it gets in unenlightened existence, as far as I can tell.
Like I say, man, a bad day in New Zealand is better than a good day at home.
That's not the pig that sang at the moon beach, is it?
What's that?
The book, the pig that sang at the beach.
Sang to the moon. That's not far from the beach where Michael's house is.
I've never heard of that.
It's actually just down the coast, a little ways. Yeah. Exactly. Cool. That pig.
We'll see you all there for a big meditation on the deck.
That's right. We'll do a retreat on the grass at your house. All right. So good to see you all. Welcome to Meditation for Everyone. So we'll begin, as we usually do, with a little bit of sitting. And so what I thought we would begin with is just the settling with the breath awareness that we've been kind of trying to keep kind of practicing every time. And what I'll do for this session is let you choose which method works for you. We've talked about different places in the body to keep the awareness of the breath, either kind of the full kind of wide angle lens of the full body awareness of breathing, or focusing on the abdomen, the diaphragm kind of rising and falling, or the lungs or the nostrils. So I'll let you choose. You might have, kind of figured out what works best for you. We also talked about counting each cycle as a way of keeping our mind kind of focused on the breath. And so if you've experimented with that, and if that works, also last time we were talking about labeling. The last 2 weeks, we were talking about labeling the nature of the distraction. When you notice that your mind is off the sensations of the breath, just very, very lightly touching with a simple label as a way of training that vigilance. We talked about that quality of mind that is alert to when you're off the object. And that's a quality that we're training so that we're not off the object for too long before going back again. And so if that worked for you, I'm going to give you a lot of choices with this practice. We're going to be sitting for about 10 minutes just to use what you've experimented with and what you find works for you. At the end of settling, we're going to set our intention for our practice together. And that's something that we're going to kind of weave into our practice, is setting our intention clearly at the beginning of practice and then dedicating the positive energy or dedicating the merit at the end. We kind of enclose our practice. And next week, I'll get more into some of these preliminaries that we do to sort of set up for a successful meditation session. But we always try and set our intention at the beginning, and at the end of whatever practice we do, we dedicate the positive energy. So we'll sit like that for about 10 minutes, then we'll just have a little check-in in the chat, see how everybody's doing, review last week's material, continue talking about some of the obstacles, and then do a different type of conceptual or guided meditation. So that's kind of the agenda for tonight. So if you just get in your comfortable posture with your back straight, your shoulders even, and you might be sitting down on a cushion with your legs crossed comfortably, or sitting up in a chair and making sure that your legs are braced in a nice stable posture. It's helpful to have your tongue on the roof of your mouth right behind your teeth. That keeps you from having to swallow constantly. And your hands can be resting in your lap, or you could have that very formal posture with your right hand on top of your left and your thumbs touching just right below your navel, or even your hands just kind of resting on your knees, whatever's comfortable. And we've been talking about trying to practice with the eyes slightly open as the antidote to that subtle dullness that we talked about last week. We'll review that today. But if we practice with just a kind of hooded gaze, but we're not at all looking at what's in front of us, we have our attention withdrawn inward, but just a little bit of light coming in, but we're not really focusing or looking at what we're seeing. We're just withdrawn, or all of our attention withdrawn. So settling into that posture. And then as a way of settling more deeply, we'll just do a body scan, starting at the crown of the head, sweeping our attention through the body, just checking for any tightness or tension in the muscles of the face, around the eyes or the jaw. And as much as possible, we're breathing through our nose, not through our mouth, with our mouth closed, but our jaw not tight or tense, and our neck and shoulders relaxed. And then sweeping down through our torso, lifting your chest, opening up your sternum, getting that nice upright posture, but your body relaxed around it, relaxing your belly. And relaxing your buttocks. And just relaxing all the way down to the feet. And then after this initial settling of the body, we'll just kind of round off this settling with 3 deep inhalations and exhalations. So 3 deep diaphragmatic breaths, and this helps to activate kind of the calming, soothing, helps us be able to be more focused. So deep inhalation, deep exhalation 3 times. And then after that, just breathing naturally and just noticing the sensations of the breath. And again, for this practice, since we're a few weeks into our class, I'll leave you in choice about which area of the body to focus on, whether you'd like to add the counting of each cycle of the breath, whether it's helpful to name the distractions, if you found that to be a helpful tool for training that vigilance or watchfulness. So I'll leave you in choice here, and we'll practice in silence for about 10 minutes, using whatever area of the body and whatever techniques that you found to be useful, helpful. And when you notice you're distracted, you've gotten caught up in a train of thought or some other distraction, just gently release and return to the breath, not fighting or struggling with your mind, just releasing and returning to the sensations of the breath. And then we'll set our intention for our time together tonight. And so just reflecting on what brought you here to this class, specifically tonight. It might be that you have some specific goals in terms of meditation, or maybe you're a beginner and you're just trying to learn some techniques to support your practice. Maybe you've been a student for a while and you're looking to revitalize your daily meditation practice. Just thinking about whatever it is that brought you here, to this class in general, to tonight in particular. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just very individual, but we say that by setting a clear intention before a practice, it really helps us get more out of the experience. And then in the Buddhist tradition, we always say that we try to set our intention for our personal goals, but also trying to generate an altruistic intention as well, that through our practice, whatever insights we gain, whatever skills we develop, that will be able to bring benefit to all beings as well, to those around us. So generating that compassionate, altruistic intention for our time together tonight. Okay. And so before we start reviewing last week's material, let's just open up the chat window. And if you just want to check in by just typing in the chat window where you're calling in from and just a couple of words about how you're doing tonight, what's coming up for you, a weather report of how you're doing, just as a way to greet everybody in the space.
Hi, if I could start, this is Carol.
Carol,
Huh?
we're going to be doing it in the chat box. We're
Only.
typing in.
Got it.
It takes quite a while. I mean, it would be great to hear from everybody, but we're going to do it in the chat box. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Somebody's in Sacramento where it's hot. Brentwood, first day of distance learning. SoCal, happy to do some meditation. Los Angeles, internet going down. Oh no. Getting nowhere, but enjoying the effort. Happy to be here in the middle of chaos in Big Sur, Santa Cruz. Doing okay as long as the weather's cool. Meditating in San Jose, Seattle, grateful and sunny. Ben Lomond getting back on track. Santa Cruz doing well. Santa Cruz feeling peaceful. Wonderful week in Monterey. Marina trying to be more calm. Need to develop calmness, don't we all? Felton and grateful. El Sobrante, ups and downs. Santa Cruz a little bit stormy. Santa Cruz feeling grateful. San Francisco moody. Doing well, learning a lot from Venerable Rubina. Great. Tara and Santa Cruz, Pleasure Point. Oh, focusing on a candle flame. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. Redwood City, light and breezy. Carol Siegel, enjoying the process. Intention to be a better listener. Great. Thank you. So the question about the hooded gaze. So with that gaze, we're not actually, it's like we're seeing, but not looking, or looking but not seeing. Maybe it's that way, where our attention is withdrawn. So if you're looking at a candle flame, then the candle flame becomes the object of your attention, right? So if you have your attention withdrawn, even though your eyes are open a little bit, you're not actually really looking at what you're seeing in front of your eyes. And it takes a while to get used to it. But I'm afraid if you're looking at something external, then the external object becomes the focus and not the breath or whatever the internal object is. We say, for developing concentration, we say it needs to be a mental object or an internal object, not an external object, for developing that kind of concentration that we've been talking about. So just be patient. The hooded gaze, I know, is difficult, but it takes a while to kind of get the hang of it. But I'm afraid that looking at something outside will then make it harder to withdraw your attention to an internal object. Okay. Okay, so let's review a little bit what we talked about last time. And from now on, Patrick is going to be keeping an eye on the chat for me. And so if anybody does have questions that you want to share in the chat or comments, Patrick is going to be reading those off. And I thought what we could do first is just review a little bit what we talked about last time. So I'm going to share my screen again. And so last session, we were looking at antidotes to dullness or sleepiness. So the first obstacle that we talked about was the obstacle of distraction. Sometimes we call it excitement. That means our mind going towards a pleasant object. And so dullness is the opposite, which ranges from that sort of buzzed out, spaced out state of mind, all the way to literally nodding off on your meditation cushion, which sometimes happens, right? And so the antidotes to dullness, and this is just a review of what we talked about last time, kind of 180-degree opposite from the antidotes to distraction. Again, the first two are external, and then we look at the internal ones. So we start first by checking our posture. Sometimes with dullness, our head is kind of slumped forward, almost our chin on our chest, right? So sometimes just making sure your back is straight, lifting your head up a little bit, lifting your chin a little bit can be really helpful. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's the only correction you need. That's kind of the most subtle level of correction. Opening your eyes part way, and that's why we have that hooded gaze. We try and really practice with that hooded gaze, increasing the amount of light in the room. So those are all external corrections you can try. If that doesn't work, tightening up mentally when you're just trying to space out a little bit. So really tightening up the intensity, kind of redoubling your concentration. If that doesn't work, sometimes we need something inspiring to energize us. So thinking of something inspiring, sometimes we can think about the amazing opportunity that we have to practice. We have time to meditate. We're interested in spiritual things. Sometimes it can be uplifting for the mind to think of an inspiring spiritual teacher or an inspiring figure in our lives. So that's enough to just kind of enliven our mind a little bit. And then the ultimate drastic correction, if nothing else works, is getting up off your cushion just for a couple of minutes, maybe get some air, look at the view, splash some cold water on your face, move around a little bit, and then get back on your cushion and keep going. Tonight, we're going to talk about how to set up a good meditation practice in the first place. So not even trying when we're really full, we've eaten a big meal, or it's late at night and we're really tired. So this is saying you've corrected for all of that and picked a good time, and you're still just feeling kind of dull and nodding off. The ultimate drastic correction, getting off your cushion and doing something. So you can see these are kind of the mirror image of the corrections for that distraction or the mind kind of overly agitated. And then we talked about the three qualities of a good meditation. So what we're trying to do is develop all three of these. So one is fixation, and that's the ability of the mind to stay on the object. One is clarity, and that just means mental clarity, a good feeling of clarity in the mind. And then the last one is intensity, and that means engagement. We're super into the meditation. So we said there's a kind of subtle dullness, which is this sort of buzzed out, kind of almost a blissed out, good feeling that we often mistake for a really good meditation session. And in that, we've got the fixation and we've got the clarity, but we don't have that intensity. We don't have that engagement. And I liken the engagement to like when you're on the edge of your seat watching a really good movie, or for me, like a really good book, a page turner, and you just can't even put it down. You're super into it. And so these are the three qualities that we're really trying to develop for a good meditation session. And that subtle dullness that's so dangerous, we're staying on the object, we have the fixation, we have mental clarity, but we don't have the intensity. And so as our meditation progresses, we get better and better at kind of determining whether we've got these three qualities or not. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. This is just by way of review to just see if there are any questions that came up in the last week, any questions you might have about that dullness, or if you were able to try any of those antidotes and if any of them worked for you. Any comments at all on those three or clarifying questions? And you can just unmute yourself or raise your hand if you've got something, or type it into the chat and Patrick will read it out. Good.
I had a question from someone in the chat, wanted
Yeah.
to know, is there a difference between intention and motivation when we're talking about, yeah, that's the question.
Yeah,
Somebody,
I think that's a great question. And often we use those two words a little bit interchangeably, right? It just kind of means, yeah, what do we want to get out of it? What motivated us to come to class? What's our intention? So I think we can use them a little bit interchangeably. Sometimes motivation and intention, sometimes I'll use them that way. But yeah, it's just what is our, and I think it's really helpful, you know, to clarify that for ourselves. Sometimes we can start some sort of practice, I don't know, peer pressure, or like it's what everybody's doing, or, you know, this is supposed to make me calm, but really getting clear for us, what's our very, very personal and individual intention. And then I think, like I usually guide us to try and prompt at least for that altruistic intention of like, may it also bring benefit to those around me in some way, right? And it doesn't need to be, oh, you start another 501c3 nonprofit and save all the Syrian refugees. It's like, hey, maybe if I get a handle on my own emotions, maybe the people around me will be happier, right? And I find for me, the motivation whenever I have that altruistic intention, even if it's something really small, then it's not about me and I stick with it a little bit more, right? Because if it's all about me, I'm like, hey, I'm good. My life is good, whatever. But if I'm thinking about, wow, is there a way that I can develop qualities that'll really be of benefit for others? So for me, I've really found in my practice, adding on, in addition to whatever my very personal intention is, adding on at least an aspiration, you know, may this also help others. It just sort of helps that steadiness for me with the practice, you know, because it's almost like I've made a commitment to others and I don't want to let them down. Great question. Anything else before we carry on? Okay. So the next obstacle that I want to talk about actually comes first in the list, and we'll review all of them at the end of the class today. And that's the obstacle of what's usually called laziness, which is defined as just not feeling like sitting down on the meditation cushion in the first place. If you haven't sat down on the cushion, you're not going to have dullness or distraction. So first you have to get your butt on the meditation cushion. And so laziness is defined as just procrastinating and not getting your butt on the meditation cushion. This is one of my teacher's jokes, and he says, this is maybe your first Tibetan vocabulary word because it's kind of a cognate. It's really easy to remember. This laziness, the Tibetan word is lay low. So you're kind of laying low, right? And just not bothering getting on the cushion in the first place. Anybody ever been bothered by this obstacle? Any experiencers? Oh, come on, you guys. Okay, I had a feeling. Yeah, me too. Me too. Right. Okay, and so there's very specific antidotes, as you might expect. I mean, isn't this cool? In the Buddhist scriptures, they give us a solution for everything, including lay low. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen again, and we'll look at the antidotes to lay low. And so we say there's kind of 4 levels that we're working up to really having that antidote to the laziness. And the first one is a faith or confidence through understanding the benefits. So if you're having one of those mornings, you just don't feel like meditating at all, you're having a really hard time getting onto your cushion, the first thing you can do is just take a couple of minutes and think about the benefits. One of the things that happens as we're meditating, we get a physical health and pliancy or flexibility. We say, and this is kind of a complicated subject, but we say through meditation, it has a powerful effect on our subtle energy body that gives us increased physical health and pliancy and flexibility. And there are a lot of studies nowadays. So many people are studying the benefits of meditation. There are all kinds of scientific studies. So all you have to do is Google health benefits of meditation. You know, lowered blood pressure, increased heart rate variability, which is a good thing, all of these physical benefits of meditation. And that's what brings a lot of people to meditation in the first place, is the wish to have those, you know, physical benefits. So it's really, really easy to find a ton of research these days on the benefits of meditation. There's also this mental pliancy or mental flexibility. And I think somebody was talking about this, I'm not sure if it was this class or my Friday class recently, but somebody was asking, oh, it was this class. It was Dave talking about emotions. And I was saying, it's not that we're trying to get rid of emotions. We're just trying to bounce back, right? Our mind kind of bouncing back to equilibrium more quickly. We might get thrown off, but there's this mental flexibility. We don't say stay so stuck, right, in those disturbing emotions. It doesn't concretize and we just stay there. There's this pliancy and flexibility that we're able to kind of move back. We're not so thrown off, whether it's our emotions or external things that happen. You know, lockdown for coronavirus. Oh, what a drag. Okay, how do I deal with that, right? You're just to have that more of that mental pliancy. This next one is really interesting, this creative thinking. And this is a side effect of meditation, is you're able to think creatively and come up with like unique solutions to problems. And I've really noticed this in myself a couple of times. Sometimes it seems like there's a problem and you need to make a choice that's a real dichotomy. Oh, it's either going to be this or it's going to be this. And then you're able to think of some kind of creative solution that's something different. You're able to kind of work both ends to the middle with some sort of a creative solution to the problem. So it increases that creativity. The ability to concentrate, and as I've mentioned before, when we develop that ability to concentrate, it doesn't work just when we're concentrating on the meditation cushion. We're able to bring more focus to whatever it is that we're doing. right? To work, to other projects, to other studies that we're doing. We're really able to bring that focused mind to whatever it is that we're wanting to do. And then according to Buddhism, we say the main benefit is being able to develop the mind so that we're able to develop those realizations on the spiritual path. For example, last week, we did the meditation on impermanence, and we say we're able to develop a realization of impermanence so that we're really, flexible with the ever-changing nature of things. Tonight, we're going to do a loving kindness meditation, another kind of guided meditation. And the more we do these practices in a focused way, then we're easily able to develop the realizations of the spiritual path. Now, after having kind of contemplated all of those benefits, having some faith or confidence through understanding the benefits, then the next step is an aspiration. Having understood the benefits, we go, oh, I want that, right? So that aspiration is like, that sounds cool. I really want that. And then having developed the aspiration, we're willing to work hard. We're willing to put in the effort. And then the pliancy, we begin to see the results over time. And meditation is hard. We've talked about how our mind is sort of always seeking stimulation, right? So sitting, as we found, sitting for 10, 15, 20 minutes, focusing on something like the breath, it's really hard. It just goes against our nature of always kind of seeking some kind of stimulation. So we really need to meditate on the benefits, develop that aspiration, put that effort in. And then once we've started to see the results, but it takes a little bit of time, then we're more inspired because you'll notice, oh, my mind is more flexible. I am able to focus on whatever I want a little bit more. Maybe you're even developing some realizations of the path. But all of that takes a little bit of time. And so this is a way to just get ourselves motivated to even start to develop a daily meditation practice. Because like I said, we didn't kind of evolve to sit and focus on one object. We kind of evolved to always be looking at new opportunities. Ooh, what's next? What's next? What's next? Which is why it is quite hard, but we do have this ability. And by meditating on all of these benefits and then getting motivated, then putting the effort in and then seeing the results. And so I'm going to stop sharing and see if there's any questions about that list before we go on to review all of the obstacles and antidotes.
Venerable, there's a question that I missed from somebody, Susan, who doesn't have audio or video. She asked, she says, when you felt very calm, like making progress, and something suddenly disrupts the calm, how do you not feel defeated, if only temporarily?
Yeah, and I think, I actually have a friend who's kind of learning to meditate, and he's very thrown off. He's doing this thing. I mean, this may be helpful if I tell the story. He's doing this thing of measuring his heart rate after every meditation session. Like, he wrote to me that he was doing this. And then he was like, one day his heart rate went up. And he was just like, oh, what's the use, right? Really, really discouraged by that. And I said, it's what they say about people when you're losing weight, like, don't weigh yourself every single day, because of course you're going to have fluctuations of ups and downs. Weigh yourself like once a week, and then the next week, and then you see over time there's progress. And so I think we just need to expect, yeah, for sure there's going to be ups and downs. You're going to feel like your meditation's going really well, and then just something will happen for a while. But really taking the long range view about your meditation practice, just like any other project that is going to take quite a lot of time to really perfect, and not getting so thrown off balance I wrote my friend a long email yesterday, and I'm like, don't you dare measure your heart rate after every meditation, because then there's going to be this expectation that's already going to create anxiety. And of course, your heart rate's going to increase. You know, it's like, don't even do that. So I think for all of us, just setting our intention and just going, whether we feel subjectively like that session went so-called well or not, it's just this project that we're engaging in long term. And it's always beneficial to just keep at it, right? Even if we have these fluctuations. And I think if we get too thrown off by like a quote unquote bad day, you know, then it's just setting ourselves up for discouragement. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has this beautiful, one of his books, he has this beautiful way that he talks about our spiritual practice. And he says, we really do need these long range kind of vision for our practice. He says, you know, in terms of Buddhist goal, we really talk about lifetimes. And he says you should be able to look back like a year, 6 months, and see progress, but also not to get your expectations so high that, you know, in a very, very short period of time, your mind is going to completely transform. So kind of holding both simultaneously, like being able to see progress over kind of the medium term, but realize, you know, this is really a long range project. So hopefully that helps, Susan. You can type in if that clarifies, or if you've got any other question. Anybody else?
Venerable, this is Patrick. I'm curious about the benefits, and when you're talking about them, are those anecdotal and scientifically researched, all of them, or do you have time to?
Yeah, they're from the scriptures. So those are from the Buddhist scriptures. All of these antidotes for both the distraction and the dullness and the laziness are all coming straight from the Buddhist scriptures about how to meditate. Yeah. Now, which ones of these have been scientifically researched? I think for sure the physical health benefits have. This meditation teacher, Alan Wallace, is working in conjunction with scientists to do a lot of studies on the benefits for on the mind of like long-term meditators. One of the things in Western science, there hasn't been a lot of research yet on subjective experience. And so this is a big conversation that's happening right now in the contemplative science world. In fact, Western science has been very suspicious of subjective experience because it's seen to maybe, you know, bias the results of a study, right? And so now to actually study first-person subjective experience of mental states is something that's being more and more studied, but for a long time it wasn't, you know, so people would study things like blood pressure and heart rate and all of that stuff, but they wouldn't really ever study the first person, you know, subjective experience of what's going on in the mind. So that's a very new area of study, even though the Buddha's been, you know, Buddhists have been talking about it for 2,500 years, but it's a new area of study. Yeah, yeah. All right, so I want to share another screen, which is a summary of all of the antidotes that we've been talking about, the obstacle and the antidotes. And so it's going to take me a minute to find my screen. Okay, here we go. So this is a page in your handout that you got, the PDF. This is page 9, and it's a chart of the 5 faults and the 8 antidotes. And so this is kind of a summary of what we've been talking about so far, all in one chart. And so the 5 faults, laziness, this is the one we've just been talking about. And so you see on the right-hand side, the 8 antidotes, understanding the benefits, physical health and pliancy, mental pliancy, creative thinking, ability to concentrate, realizations, aspiration to practice, effort, and pliancy. This is what we just went through. The second fault, losing the object of meditation, which is known in the scriptures as forgetting the advice. And it doesn't mean forgetting what I've said. It just means losing the object of meditation. And then mindfulness is the quality of mind that keeps the mind on the object. So that's that quality of mind that keeps the mind tethered on the object, whether it's the breath or compassion meditation or whatever else it might be. And then laxity and excitement, or that dullness and agitation, the dullness and distraction. The antidote to that is that introspection. I've been calling it also vigilance. That's the part of the mind that notices when you're off the object. And so the antidote for both distraction and dullness is noticing it in the first place. And then the fault of non-application of the antidotes means you apply the antidotes. So we said for distraction, loosening up the focus slightly, thinking of a sobering topic briefly, returning to breath awareness for a few minutes. So this is kind of in order of severity of the problem. For dullness, tightening up the focus, thinking of an inspiring object, briefly getting up, walking around, getting fresh air. So this is kind of breaking down everything that we've talked about before in terms of the faults and the antidotes. And then the very last one that we haven't talked about yet, over application. And this means applying an antidote when your meditation is going really well and you don't have a problem at all. It's almost like second guessing how well the meditation is going and applying an antidote when you don't have to. And so the antidote for that is just leave it alone, right? If you get to the point where your meditation is just cruising, you're doing really, really well with your meditation, then just leave it, like leave it alone, okay? So this in one chart that's in your handout is just kind of a summary of all of the obstacles and the antidotes that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. So I just wanted to share that with you, and you should have it. If you don't have that handout, Patrick gave it to everybody who'd registered. If for some reason you don't have it, you can maybe put your email in the chat and then Patrick will send it to you. But everybody should have that. So that's just kind of a review of all of those obstacles and the antidotes. Okay, so what we're going to do for tonight's meditation session is a different kind of conceptual or analytical meditation. Last week, if you were here, we did impermanence meditation. And so we were looking at kind of the gross and subtle impermanence of both physical and mental phenomena, both internally and externally. And we went through that. And that's an example of a kind of analytical or conceptual practice where we're using a thought process. We're actually training our mind in a very specific direction as a way to try and gain some insight into the nature of reality. The Buddha said basically all of our suffering comes from misunderstanding the way things exist and expecting something that is unrealistic. And so expecting that things will last forever. We expect the good stuff will last forever. We also think the bad stuff will last forever. And then we freak out about that. And so just understanding this ever-changing nature of things really helps us suffer less. So I went through that as just an example of one of those kinds of analytical or conceptual meditations where we get an insight into the nature of reality. What we're going to do tonight is a loving kindness meditation. And this is a meditation where we're not necessarily trying to get an insight into something, but we're trying to develop a specific quality that we have. So we talk sometimes about cultivation instead of like generating or starting from scratch. We all have loving kindness, We all have compassion. So we're kind of building on that and try to expand it. What we'll do in this practice, we always start where it's easy. We all feel love and compassion for somebody in our lives, or even our beloved pet. It's completely fine to use your beloved pet, or just whoever you feel that you have the most kind of unconditional love and compassion for. So we always begin with that, because then we get kind of a felt sense of that quality. Then we usually expand. I kind of think of it as just these concentric circles, like starting where it's easy. But of course, if we just stayed where it was easy, nothing would ever really stretch and develop. And so what we do is we do this practice. Then we usually go to ourselves. Now, in the very, very traditional Buddhist practice of loving kindness and compassion, the texts say, well, start with yourself, because of course you feel more love and compassion for yourself than you do for anyone else. And we're like, no, it's complicated, right? For a lot of us, it's not so easy to have the same kind of love and compassion that we have for a loved one towards ourselves. So that's interesting, but we can't skip over it. So then we usually, the second kind of concentric circle when we're doing a group practice is ourselves. And then we start with kind of the outer circles. When we go through the whole thing, sometimes then we'll do neutral people, people that we might be indifferent to in a way. And then we start with the difficult people. I always say, like, moving gradually, and tonight's meditation will go through a lot of the concentric circles, but when you're actually doing the practice, you know, stay in what we call the growth zone, where you're stretching a little bit. You're not staying with your beloved pet forever, because then nothing's really going to be developing. So you're challenging just a little bit out of your comfort zone, but not going all the way out to the most difficult person for you. Because you then, I mean, somebody had a question about getting discouraged and feeling like you're failing. Like 100%, that's going to happen if you go straight to the most difficult person. So we work on it gradually. And what you feel, even in tonight's practice, if you feel like you've hit the edge and you've hit your limit, that's fine. Just stop. I may be prompting a couple more kind of concentric circles, but if you just feel like, okay, I've really stretched, I'm good, that's fine. You can just go ahead and stay there. So I'll guide you through that practice. Then we'll have a little bit of time to talk about it. First, before we sit though, I want to give you a little bio break, 3 or 4 minutes to just stretch, maybe get something to drink, go to the bathroom if you need to, and then we'll come back and do some practice. Okay. So one of the things that we're going to do in this practice is experiment a little bit in addition to kind of the conceptual and analytical thought process. We're going to experiment a little bit also with some visualization. And I'm also going to suggest that you might like to repeat some phrases of loving kindness. Some people find that by using phrases, that really helps them generate that sense of loving kindness. So I'll prompt you. We're going to be, kind of thinking about loving kindness in a conceptual way. And I'll prompt you with some phrases that you might want to repeat to yourself silently, and also think about sending the energy of loving kindness in the form of this bright light out from your heart. So we'll kind of see what works for you. And again, like a lot of the practices, some things really aid you to be able to really generate that feeling. Some things might feel like too much of a distraction and not be useful. So just try and we'll kind of see what works. So getting in your meditation posture with your back straight, your shoulders even, and just taking a moment. We won't do a whole guided body scan, but just kind of taking a moment to settle into your posture and make sure that you're relaxed. Just moving through your body, checking for any tightness or tension. And then after settling your body, we usually begin even these conceptual meditations with just a couple of moments of breath awareness practice as a way to settle our minds. And so just settling in with a few moments of breath awareness. And so we'll begin by first generating that feeling of loving kindness in our hearts. And so bring to mind someone that you love, someone for whom you naturally feel strong feelings of love and compassion. It could be a good friend, it could be a family member, it could even be a family pet. And if it's helpful, you can visualize that person seated in front of you, or get a felt sense of that person's presence. So either a visual image or just a felt sense of someone that you have natural good feelings for that person. And just take a moment to get that visual image or that felt sense, and really letting those good feelings arise. Loving kindness is wanting others to be happy and to not suffer. And as you're getting in touch with that feeling of loving kindness, you might like to imagine your loving kindness is a warm, bright light or a gentle, positive energy radiating from your heart, connecting from your heart to that person, bathing that person in that warm glow of that bright light, that positive energy. And you might also like to use some phrases in your mind, repeating may you be well. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. As you imagine that warm light and really feel that felt sense of the loving kindness that you have for your beloved friend. May you be well, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering as that warm light goes out from your heart towards your friend. And so now that we've activated that loving kindness by thinking of that dear friend, you can let the visualization of that person dissolve back into the space of your mind. And then we'll send loving kindness to ourselves. And so sometimes this is challenging, but loving ourselves means accepting ourselves just as we are with our faults, our shortcomings. It means being kind to ourselves, being a friend to ourselves rather than being angry and frustrated that we aren't the people we'd like to be. It means acknowledging our positive potential, wishing ourselves to be happy and free from problems. And so really that same positive energy that we generated towards our beloved friend, really wishing ourselves all the happiness and goodness there is. So imagine now that that same warm light, that same feeling of loving kindness radiates out and gradually fills your whole body and mind. So sending that same warm glow, that bright light to yourself. And you might like to add the phrases, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be free from suffering. May I be well, may I be happy, may I be free from suffering. And then next, generating loving kindness for your relatives, your family members. And so you might like to visualize the people in your family seated in front of you. You can also visualize, even if your parents have passed away, you can visualize them as well. Other family members. Just get a felt sense or a visual image of your family members. And that same warm glow, that same bright light, thinking, may my parents and other members of my family be well and happy. May they be free of all problems and suffering. Addressing them directly, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering. So just take a few moments to send that same loving energy out to the members of your family. May you be well, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering. And then letting the visualization of your family members dissolve back into the space of your mind. And now thinking of a neutral person. So someone that you recognize, somebody that you know, but that you don't have any particularly strong feelings one way or another, no affection, no particular aversion for this person. May have been somebody who served you coffee in a cafe, or maybe a coworker, or maybe somebody who works at the grocery store where you do your shopping, somebody specific. So taking a moment to think of that person, get a visual image or felt sense of that person's presence in front of you. And then thinking, with this person that I don't know at all, but there they are, human being just like me. I know they have problems and suffering just like me. They wish for ease and peace and happiness just like me. So with that connection, that feeling of common humanity, try to feel in your heart that same loving kindness, that wish for them to have happiness. And again, you might like to visualize it as a warm light coming out from your heart towards that person, that stranger, that person you don't know at all. But instead of indifference, wishing them well. May you be happy. May you be well. May you be free from suffering. Just taking a few moments to send that same energy of loving kindness out to that stranger, that person, a human being, living being just like you. May you be happy. May you be well. May you be free from suffering. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. And then letting the visualization of that person dissolve back into the space of your mind. And now see if you can generate loving kindness for a difficult person, and try to think of someone who's maybe a 3 or 4 on a scale of 1 to 10, not the most difficult person in your life by any means, but somebody that you just might find irritating or annoying. And if this is too hard for now, that's fine. You can just let it go. But there might be somebody in your life that you find just mildly or moderately annoying, maybe just somebody you dislike, someone you disagree with. And letting someone specific come to mind, and thinking that this too is a human being who just wants to be happy and free of problems just like you do. They need love just like you do. Maybe they're acting out of confusion or fear or some other disturbing emotion. And again, don't push too much. You don't want to be overwhelmed, but if you can think of someone for whom you can attempt to send that same positive, loving energy flowing from your heart, wishing that person well, wishing them to be free from whatever difficult emotions cause them to act the way they do, wishing them to find peace of mind and happiness. So with that same warm glow, that same bright light, thinking, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering. So spending some moments sending those same wishes of loving kindness to even that difficult person. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. And then letting the visualization of that person dissolve back into the space of your mind. And finally, generating loving kindness for all beings. So for this, you can just imagine that same warm glow, that bright light that you've generated in your heart. Just imagining going out to all living beings, both human and non-human beings. And you might like to think especially of those going through extreme difficulties, maybe all the people suffering from COVID, or maybe who've lost loved ones, or maybe wars, poverty, hunger, fear, oppression. So really imagining that bright light going out and touching all living beings, thinking, may all beings everywhere be well and happy. May they all be free from suffering. Taking a few moments to really feel that gentle energy of loving kindness radiating out from your heart to all living beings. And then letting that visualization dissolve back into the space of your mind, and just taking a few moments to go back to the breath and just feel whatever sensations you might be experiencing in your body. Really noticing, how does your heart feel after that practice? How does your body feel? And just settling again with the breath for a few moments. Okay. So we've got a couple of minutes, and I just wanted to see if anybody has any reflections or questions or experiences around that meditation. You can either unmute or type it into the chat. Anything to reflect on?
I had a question.
Yeah, Michael.
I know some other people, you know, a lot of people are doing this loving kindness meditation at the moment.
Yeah.
But they, in some groups that I've seen, they sort of stop at the self, at I, because of the situations. They're saying, may I be happy? May I not have suffering? I just don't know if this is relevant, but I sort of feel like, oh, there's kind of a danger of turning that into a meditation about yourself.
Yeah.
Instead of expanding it out. And I go, is there some sort of artful antidote to kind of, you know, spread the love? Because it seems like when you get very self-referential, it can actually be disturbing.
Yeah.
Or when you think about others, you know, that's what tends to make me the most happy, when you're doing something for others. I was just wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, there are different kind of trainings. Like, for example, there's a training that I've done. We did it at Land of Medicine Buddha, and I did it with the trainer, called Mindful Self-Compassion. And so it's a training that's been developed by, it's a researcher called Kristen Neff, she's a psychologist and has devoted her whole career to self-compassion, mostly because of her own personal journey and realizing she didn't have any self-compassion at all and what a problem it caused her. And so there are some entire programs focused on self-compassion and self-kindness. And it's just to overcome, because I think several things can happen. I think, yes, we can become too self-absorbed, but then we can also kind of skip over all of our own messy stuff and go, no, I'll just think about others because I'm kind of a mess and I don't deserve kindness, so I'll just think of others, which is also out of balance. So I think some of those programs can help us balance out. Like in Buddhism, we say we equalize self and others, and we just see ourselves as another being equally deserving of happiness and loving kindness and compassion. And for some of us, that's the hardest case. Like for some of us with the concentric circle, ourselves would be way out. It's the hardest level. For some of us, that's super easy. Not usually though, right? And so I think sometimes, again, to get to the balance, sometimes we need to overcorrect in a certain direction to just get to finally being able to balance. And so I think it's important not to only think of ourselves, but it's also equally important, I think, not to skip over ourselves. And I see that a lot. I see the spiritual path really attracts people who are just really, really altruistic, really compassionate, really loving, but then they're not even treating themselves with the slightest bit of kindness at all. They're like suspicious of their own happiness. They don't allow themselves to feel joy. They don't allow themselves even to eat like nice food or something. And it's kind of like, really? Like, no. Equal, you and other beings. Like, although, I will say, because there's a spiritual, path rumor that you have to love yourself first before you can love others. Has anybody heard this rumor that you need to have love and compassion? Totally wrong. There's been research that has shown it's very easy for people to have way more love and compassion for others than they do for themselves. And the danger with that rumor is, if you're one of those people that doesn't have much self-kindness but really cares about others, you can sort of second guess and doubt the care that you have for others, but it's definitely possible. So that thing of you need to love yourself. However, I think it's true that sustainable care of others can only happen when we're also caring for ourselves, right? So if it's so out of balance that you're caring for others and not caring for yourselves in a reasonable, realistic way, recipe for burnout, right? Especially if you're doing action of caring for others. So it's really about the balance. So I think those programs that focus on self-compassion are a corrective that are really important. I mean, I think especially in our culture, and many of you know, I can go on a whole rant about why culturally that's happening. And some of you have heard my rant about that. And, this is not the time. But I think it's a corrective for how little self-kindness and compassion. And then once we can get that balanced out, then we have kind of the resilience of the self-care to be able to really show up for others.
Do you think that doing meditation, equanimity meditation, or that this mindful self-compassion needs to come first before you start practicing equanimity type meditation?
Well, for the program that I teach, this is going to be a little bit of an advertisement, but it's okay because I chose to teach compassion cultivation training, this program that was developed at Stanford, like comparing different programs. because it's an 8-week program that includes 2 weeks of 1 week of self-kindness, 1 week of self-compassion, and then expands to compassion for others. So it's kind of woven in to the whole thing. So in my mind, I like that because we do the same thing we did tonight in that program. Start with the loved one, start for what's easy. And then we spend 2 weeks on the self because it can be so hard, but then not stopping there and continuing. So I think for the full practice, I like that method, right? Because it doesn't skip over the self, but it doesn't just stop with the self either, right? Yeah. Great question. Yeah. And it's all about balance. You know, I mean, that's kind of my answer for everything. Sorry, you guys, if I'm a broken record and just go balance.
Get away, man.
That's kind of what it's all about, is balance. Great. Thanks. Any other questions?
There's a couple from the chat.
Okay.
Paul had asked earlier about first if you could give examples of intention.
Let's have anybody that would like to share what your intention is, maybe unmute yourself. What are some examples of intention of the folks in the room? Anybody want to share? When you're setting your intention at the beginning of practice?
My intention was to find balance.
To find balance? Okay. Jenny?
My intention is to, it's just kind of big picture, which is to let go of that which isn't serving me and build on that which is serving me on my path to enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Nice. Very complete. Anybody else have one you'd like to share?
I always like the simple one of may I be of service to others.
Yeah, good. And some people have, you know, a specific thing of may I just kind of calm my crazy mind, may I learn how to deal with my anger, you know, and sometimes it is kind of different levels of like, may I get more calm and peace of mind and work with my emotions so that I'll be able to benefit others. So Paul, I think it can be, you know, it can be very personal, and everything from the very temporal short-term goals to, you know, kind of the more all-encompassing goals. But like I said, it's always nice to add on a bit of a added at least aspiration for an altruistic intention for our practice too, because I think it just creates a spacious mind that's not so hung up on what's happening for us in our subjective experience in any given moment. Yeah, thank you. Good. Anything else, Patrick? Did you say there was
Dana asked about the permission to change the order of the circles to reflect our feelings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our concentric circles can be, I mean, usually starting with the loved one, whether the loved one is ourselves or another beloved being, because then it's, you know, I think of it as like priming a pump, like we get the felt sense of what's going on. And then after that felt sense, then whatever, you know, however it sort of naturally works. But the idea is to just stretch with every concentric circle, going a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And I don't have the diagram. There's this famous diagram that some of you have done classes with me will recognize, and maybe I'll share it next week, of like, we've got a comfort zone and then a growth zone and an overwhelm zone. So we're always trying to be a little bit in the growth zone and not all the way in the overwhelm zone. And that's why I say pick somebody moderately difficult, not the hardest case. You know, but not just staying fully in our comfort zone. But what your concentric circles look like might be very individual to you and who's in them, right? So yeah, you're perfectly 100% have permission to make your own concentric circles. Anything else, Patrick? Was there any other questions?
Carol commented that she struggles with sleepiness.
Yeah, and next week, actually, that's a good segue. We'll talk next week about some of the conducive conditions for setting up a meditation practice. We've been really focusing on the obstacles and the antidotes to these specific obstacles, but we'll talk kind of more in general about how to set up conducive conditions that like start us, kind of set us up for success before we've even sat down on the cushion. So we'll talk more about that. Next week, we'll talk about that and also some of the stages that we can expect our meditation to go through as we progress, kind of a preview of coming attractions. So that'll be fun. And then we'll do some more guided meditation. So we're at time, but let's just take a moment to reflect. We dedicate the positive energy. So just taking a moment to reflect on all the positive energy that we've generated through our session tonight, our meditation, our discussion, our practice, and dedicate it towards our spiritual goals. So at the beginning of the session, we set our aspiration of what we wanted to get out of tonight's session. And now we've got some positive energy to dedicate in that direction, put that in the bank account for our spiritual goals, creating the cause. And just taking a moment to focus that energy. Great, thank you. And for the next week, I suggest kind of continuing with the breath awareness. It really takes us a while to develop that focus and that concentration for a little bit every day, continuing with the breath. And if you'd like to play around with the concentric circles and this loving kindness meditation the way that we did, at least a couple of times before the next week, play around, see where your edge is. Like I said, we kind of went all the way out, even to the difficult person, this time, but see where your edge is and what challenges you, but doesn't send you into overwhelm. And then we'll see if we can hear from a couple of people next week. So have a great week. Stay safe. If you want to unmute and say goodbye to everybody as we're disappearing into the ozone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
He doesn't.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good to see you, Michael.
Bye, everybody.
He's gone.
Bye. That is Patrick.